The notary, Ser Piero da Vinci, was a respectable man in the particular way that 15th-century Tuscan professional men measured respectability. He had clients, he had standing, he had the specific social position of a family that had produced notaries for 4 generations, and whose exact legal services were required by the particular commercial life of the region. He also had, on the 15th of April, 1452, a son by a peasant girl named Caterina, and the specific manner in which this particular fact was recorded in the family ledger, the exact brevity of the entry, the particular absence of the mother's surname, the founding notation of the child's birth, without the specific ceremonial weight that legitimate births received, was the founding statement of what Leonardo da Vinci was and was not in the specific social world he had entered. He was not legitimate. He was not his father's heir in any of the particular ways that mattered to the specific legal and professional structures of 15th-century Tuscany. He was, in the exact language of the founding social order, nobody's son in the particular sense that counted, and this specific fact would eventually make him everybody's genius. The particular consequences of illegitimacy in the Italian Renaissance were precise and institutional, rather than merely social. Ser Piero's notarial guild, the specific professional organization whose exact membership was the founding requirement for practicing the particular legal trade that the da Vinci family had conducted for generations, was closed to illegitimate sons by the founding rules whose character reflected the specific understanding that professional inheritance required the exact legitimacy of bloodline that Leonardo's birth could not provide. The particular university education that opened the specific learned professions of medicine and law and theology to legitimate sons of professional families was similarly unavailable in the exact manner that the founding educational institutions of the period restricted their particular access. Leonardo would not be a notary. He would not be a physician. He would not be a lawyer or a theologian or any of the specific things that the particular professional education of 15th-century Italy could have made a man of his father's standing son. He grew up in the Vinci countryside, in the particular custody of his father's family, his grandmother and grandfather, while Caterina was married to a local man and began a separate, specific life whose exact relationship to Leonardo's particular development was the founding complexity of a mother who was present in the same general landscape but absent from the specific household. The Vinci countryside was the exact natural environment whose particular features the specific Tuscan hills, the exact watercourses whose behavior Leonardo would spend his entire life studying, the particular limestone formations whose founding geological character he would eventually understand better than any contemporary natural philosopher, the specific birds whose exact flight mechanics he would design machines to reproduce, were the founding observational database of the specific scientific imagination being developed in the particular mind of a child whose exact solitude, the founding condition of the specific childhood that his particular social position had created, made extended attention to the natural world, the primary available occupation. What the illegitimacy gave Leonardo, beyond the particular freedom from the specific professional constraints of the notarial tradition, was the exact psychological formation of a man who had always existed slightly outside the specific social categories that organized other people's identities. He was the son of a respectable man who could not claim that respectability. He was part of a prosperous family whose particular inheritance he could not receive. He was educated enough, through the specific informal learning that his father's household provided, to understand the exact world of letters and Latin without having been granted the founding formal education that the particular institutional tradition required for its specific professions. The particular outsider psychology that this exact combination produced the founding hunger of a man who understands the specific world he cannot fully enter, the exact self-sufficiency of a person who has learned that the particular institutional pathways are closed and who must therefore build the founding alternative, was the specific psychological condition of the genius who would eventually make the particular institutional limitations irrelevant by exceeding every institution he encountered. Verrocchio's workshop in Florence received the 14-year-old Leonardo around 1466, and the specific character of the Florentine bottega as an educational institution was the exact alternative to the founding university education that his particular birth had denied, it him more comprehensive in certain specific respects, more directly connected to the exact practical and theoretical knowledge that the particular arts required, the founding combination of goldsmithing and painting and sculpture and engineering, whose specific integration in the single institutional setting of the Renaissance workshop was the particular educational tradition from which the founding Leonardine synthesis would eventually emerge. The specific Florence that 14-year-old Leonardo entered in 1466 was the most concentrated single location of artistic and intellectual achievement in the contemporary world, and the particular young man who arrived as Verrocchio's new apprentice was carrying, in the exact combination of his founding natural observation, his particular psychological formation, and the specific freedom that his illegitimacy had paradoxically provided, the founding materials of the specific genius whose full expression the subsequent decades would produce. Andrea del Verrocchio's workshop occupied a specific position in the particular hierarchy of Florentine artistic production that made it the exact institution through which any serious young talent in the Tuscan artistic tradition needed to pass not merely a place where painting was taught, but the founding integrated studio whose exact combination of disciplines reflected the particular Renaissance, understanding that the specific boundaries between painting and sculpture and goldsmithing and engineering were institutional, conveniences rather than natural divisions of the creative act. Verrocchio himself was the particular expression of this founding integration, the exact sculptor who cast bronze, designed pageants, painted altarpieces, and built mechanical devices for the specific Medici court, whose patronage was the founding economic foundation of his workshop's particular commercial existence. The apprentices who passed through his bottega were exposed to the exact technical range of a master, whose specific competence across multiple disciplines was not the particular exception of a universal talent, but the founding expectation of what a Renaissance workshop was supposed to produce. The specific Florentine context that surrounded Verrocchio's workshop was the particular expression of what Lorenzo de' Medici had created by the specific combination of banking wealth, political genius, and the founding personal intellectual cultivation that made him simultaneously the most powerful man in Florence and the exact most educated patron of the 15th century Italian artistic tradition. The Platonic Academy that Marsilio Ficino had organized under Medici patronage was the particular philosophical institution whose specific discussions, the exact engagement with the founding texts of Plato and the Neoplatonic tradition whose particular rediscovery was the founding intellectual act of the Italian Renaissance, provided the broader intellectual framework within which the specific artistic achievements of the Florentine tradition made cultural sense. The particular Florence of the 1470s and 1480s was the exact city in which the founding belief that the specific visual arts were not merely craft, but the particular expression of the highest human intellectual and spiritual capacities had been institutionalized in the cultural values of the dominant class whose specific patronage expressed that belief in every commission it placed. Botticelli was in Verrocchio's orbit. Ghirlandaio was developing his particular fresco tradition in the specific churches whose founding walls were the exact institutional surface of the Florentine artistic commission. Perugino, who would teach Raphael, was painting in the specific manner whose exact technical accomplishment was the founding standard of the Umbrian tradition. The particular concentration of specific artistic talent in the single geographic space of late 15th century Florence was not accidental. It was the founding expression of the exact patronage system whose specific financial resources, concentrated in the particular Medici banking network and the exact commercial wealth of the Florentine merchant class, created the founding market for artistic production, whose particular scale and sophistication attracted and developed the specific talents whose cumulative achievement the subsequent tradition would call the Renaissance. The specific angel that Leonardo painted in Verrocchio's Baptism of Christ, the particular left-hand angel whose exact quality of execution so visibly exceeds the specific standard of the surrounding figures that the founding story of Verrocchio's retirement from painting, reportedly moved by the discovery that his apprentice had already surpassed him, has been attached to it, was the founding public statement of the particular technical and psychological achievement that the young Leonardo had developed from the exact workshop training. The specific sfumato that is already visible in the founding Leonardo angel, the particular blurring of edges, the exact atmospheric softness that distinguishes the specific figure from the harder outlined figures of the workshop tradition, was not yet the systematic technique whose founding expression would produce the Mona Lisa, but it was the beginning of the exact optical understanding whose particular development over the following 3 decades would convert the specific traditional technique of precise outline into the founding alternative of atmospheric suggestion. The Annunciation, painted in the specific years of the early 1470s when Leonardo was still formally part of Verrocchio's workshop, was the founding independent statement of the particular Leonardine approach to landscape, the exact Arno Valley visible in the background, whose specific atmospheric depth, the particular recession of the landscape forms into the founding atmospheric haze, was the first complete expression of the specific aerial perspective that Leonardo's founding observations of the Tuscan countryside had produced. The particular angel in the Annunciation was rendered with the founding botanical precision of a man who had been observing the specific plant forms of the Vinci countryside since childhood, the exact leaves and stems whose particular accuracy distinguishes them from the conventional decorative vegetation of the contemporary tradition, and reveals the founding character of a mind for which seeing was the specific prerequisite of representing. The particular Florence that formed Leonardo's specific artistic and intellectual foundations was simultaneously the founding most generative and the most specific institutionally constrained environment of the Italian Renaissance, the exact city that produced the founding artistic tradition, and also the particular patronage system whose specific demands on the artists it supported would eventually prove insufficient for the founding range of Leonardo's investigations. The man who had learned to see in Florence would eventually need a different kind of patron, one who needed the specific practical engineering skills that the founding Florentine artistic tradition had never prioritized. Pick up any page of Leonardo da Vinci's surviving notebooks, and the specific experience of encountering it is the particular one of looking at a document that belongs to a different category of human production from anything the conventional understanding of a notebook suggests. The particular pages are not merely records of ideas. They are the exact expression of a mind for which the specific act of seeing and the founding act of thinking were not separate operations, but the particular unified process whose exact output was the drawing with text, whose character is the founding Leonardine page in its most complete form. A specific study of water in a channel flows across the top of a page into the exact mathematical notation of the particular hydraulic calculation whose founding purpose is the determination of the specific flow rate, which flows into the particular drawing of the exact mechanical device whose design would control the specific flow, which flows into the founding written observation about the particular behavior of water in different conditions, whose exact content would not be formally expressed in the specific scientific tradition for another 3 centuries. The notebook page is not a record of a finished thought. It is the particular founding act of thinking itself, made visible. The specific mirror script that covers the particular pages Leonardo wrote from right to left across the page, in the exact cursive Italian that reads naturally only when reflected in a mirror, has been the subject of the page. Particular debate, whose founding question is what exactly the mirror writing was for. The specific practical explanation that Leonardo was left-handed and found the particular right-to-left direction more comfortable for avoiding smearing freshly written ink is the exact mundane answer whose founding adequacy most historians find sufficient. The particular more complex explanation that the founding privacy of a writing system that the specific casual reader could not easily decipher was the exact intentional protection of investigations whose particular content Leonardo understood as potentially sensitive, is the founding alternative whose specific support lies in the character of some of the exact content, the particular anatomical investigations whose founding legal status was ambiguous, the specific mechanical designs for weapons that the particular military clients of the founding patronage system might have considered proprietary. The range of the specific investigations across the approximately 7,200 surviving pages, the particular fraction, estimated at perhaps a third of what Leonardo actually produced, of the founding total that the specific accidents of history preserved is the exact measure of a mind whose particular intellectual appetite was genuinely without the founding boundaries that organized other people's knowledge, into the specific disciplines whose institutional expression was the particular professional tradition. The specific anatomical drawings that reveal the exact three-dimensional structure of the human heart and the particular musculature of the human shoulder share pages with the founding designs for hydraulic machines and the exact botanical studies of flowering plants and the particular astronomical observations of the moon's surface and the founding musical notation of the specific compositions that Leonardo also wrote. The exact geological observations that describe the particular processes by which the specific sedimentary rock formations of the Lombard Plain were produced share pages with the founding optical theory, whose particular application was the specific sfumato technique of the paintings, and the exact theatrical designs for the particular court spectacles whose founding mechanical complexity was the specific practical expression of the engineering imagination. The specific tragedy of the notebooks, the particular founding fact, whose exact consequence for human history is genuinely immeasurable, is that the specific discoveries they contain were not shared with the founding scientific tradition that was developing around Leonardo throughout his lifetime. Leonardo was 43 years old when Copernicus arrived in Italy to study. The particular heliocentric theory that Copernicus would eventually publish in 1543 was being worked out in the exact Polish and Italian intellectual tradition, while Leonardo's founding notebooks contained the specific observations of the moon and the particular astronomical calculations whose exact character revealed an understanding of the Earth's relationship to the Sun that was consistent with the founding heliocentric model. The notebooks were never published. The particular discoveries sat in the exact private possession of a genius who found the founding investigation more compelling than the specific communication who, in the particular language of the founding personality revealed by every specific page, was too interested in the next question to complete the founding work of transmitting the last answer. The specific loss is not abstract. When the particular geological tradition of Hutton and Lyell in the late 18th and early 19th centuries established the founding principles of the specific earth science that explained the exact landscape forms through the particular processes of erosion and deposition operating over vast timescales, they were establishing independently the specific principles whose founding expression was already contained in Leonardo's notebooks. When Harvey published his founding discovery of the specific circulation of the blood in 1628, he was establishing the exact cardiovascular insight whose particular expression was already contained in the specific anatomical drawings of a man who had died a century earlier. The particular founding discoveries of the specific scientific revolution were being made twice, once in the exact mirror script of a private notebook, and once in the specific published papers of a formal scientific tradition that had no way of knowing what the founding notebook contained. The specific notebooks that Leonardo left behind at his death in 1519 passed through the particular hands of his student, Francesco Melzi, who understood their exact founding significance and preserved them carefully. After Melzi's death, the particular collection was dispersed, the exact individual notebooks sold, given away, separated from each other in the specific manner that the founding significance of a private intellectual archive is often not recognized by the particular heirs whose exact understanding of what they have inherited is the founding tragedy of the specific dispersal. The specific hospitals of Milan and Florence and Rome that Leonardo negotiated access to over the particular course of approximately 30 years of intermittent anatomical investigation were not, in the exact institutional sense of the founding medical tradition, places where the specific dissection of human bodies was a welcome activity. The particular legal and religious framework of 15th and 16th century Italy permitted dissection in the exact limited circumstances of the founding medical education, the specific annual public dissection at the major universities whose particular ceremonial character, a professor reading from Galen, while a barber surgeon cut and a demonstrator pointed, was the founding institutional expression of an anatomical tradition that prioritized the specific authority of the ancient text over the exact evidence of the particular body being opened on the table. Leonardo's founding approach, the exact, direct observation of the specific structure, without the particular intermediary of the ancient text, whose founding authority he did not regard as sufficient when the specific, observable reality contradicted. It was the precise, methodological revolution whose character made his anatomical investigations qualitatively different from anything the formal medical tradition was producing. The conditions were specific and difficult. The particular human bodies that Leonardo examined, he claimed approximately 30, a number whose exact truth cannot be verified, but whose particular scale suggests the systematic program of a man who understood that the specific understanding he was seeking required the founding comprehensive investigation rather than the occasional examination were available in the exact winter months, when the particular cold slowed the specific decomposition that the founding practical reality of pre-refrigeration anatomy imposed on its practitioners. Leonardo worked in the specific candlelight of the founding winter hospital rooms, in the exact proximity to the particular decay, whose smell and character, to the specific accounts of the period, describe with the founding unflinching honesty of people who had no alternative to the exact conditions. The investigation required. The specific drawings that emerged from these particular investigations were the founding anatomical illustrations of a mind that understood the exact three-dimensional structure of the human body in the particular manner that the taper, flat schematic diagrams of the contemporary medical tradition had not achieved. The founding Galenic anatomical illustrations that the specific medical schools used were the exact representations of the particular theoretical understanding that Galen had produced from the specific animal dissections whose founding character Galen had never dissected a human body produced. The particular errors that the exact Leonardine direct observation was systematically identifying and correcting. The specific drawing of the human spine in the particular notebooks reveals the exact curvature of the vertebral column, whose founding three-dimensional character, the flat schematic of the traditional illustration, had entirely missed. The exact study of the particular shoulder musculature reveals the specific, functional relationships between the founding muscle groups whose character is the particular engineering understanding of the biological mechanism, rather than the exact, decorative representation of the surface anatomy. The specific drawings of the heart, the particular studies of the aortic valve, whose exact understanding of the founding mechanism of cardiac function was the specific insight that the formal medical tradition would not articulate. Until the 20th century were the founding expression of Leonardo's anatomical investigation at its most scientifically prescient. Leonardo understood that the aortic valve opened and closed through the specific hydraulic action of blood vortices, whose particular formation in the exact sinuses behind the valve leaflets was the founding mechanical explanation of the priced specific cardiac function. He drew these vortices in the particular notebook pages with the exact precision of a hydraulic engineer who had been studying the founding behavior of water in channels for decades, and who recognized in the specific cardiac blood flow the six and particular hydraulic principles, whose exact expression was the founding mechanism of the aortic valve's function. The formal cardiovascular tradition did not establish this specific understanding until the 1960s. The particular collaboration with Marcantonio della Torre, the exact young anatomist from Pavia, whose founding partnership with Leonardo in the years around 1510 was the specific combination of the particular medical knowledge of the formal anatomical tradition and the exact observational and representational genius of the founding Leonardine approach, was the founding act of the specific, comprehensive anatomical atlas that could have changed the history of medicine by decades. Della Torre died of plague in 1511, probably in his late 20s. The particular anatomical atlas was never completed. The founding collaboration that had promised to convert Leonardo's specific private drawings into the exact published scientific document that the founding medical tradition could receive and build upon was ended by the particular disease whose exact randomness was the founding expression of the specific historical contingency that governed whether Leonardo's founding discoveries would or would not enter the scientific tradition. The specific anatomical drawings that Leonardo left in the founding private notebooks were eventually purchased, 3 centuries after his death, by the English Royal Collection, where they remain today in the particular Windsor Castle collection, whose exact significance, the founding anatomical investigation of one of the greatest minds in history, still substantially unpublished, 3 centuries after its creation, is the specific measure of the founding tragedy of the notebooks, whose content arrived in the exact scientific tradition too late to change the particular history it had anticipated. The ornithopter, the particular flying machine, whose exact design was Leonardo's founding attempt to solve the specific problem of human flight through the biomechanical observation of bird wing mechanics, appears in the notebooks in multiple specific versions across the founding decades of Leonardo's investigation, each particular iteration representing the exact refinement of a mechanism whose founding conception was the specific insight that the particular problem of human flight was an engineering problem rather than a theological impossibility. The exact wing mechanism of the founding ornithopter design was based on Leonardo's specific observation of bird flight, whose particular character, the founding studies of bird wing anatomy, and the exact analysis of the specific movements that produced the particular lift and thrust, whose combination was the founding mechanical problem of flight, was the precise observational foundation of the engineering solution. The particular wing structure was hinged in the exact configuration that the specific bird anatomical studies had revealed as the founding mechanism of avian flight, driven by the particular pedal and arm mechanism, whose exact leverage calculation Leonardo worked out in the specific notebook pages with the founding engineering rigor of a man who understood that the particular problem required the exact quantitative solution rather than the founding qualitative insight. The specific problem that the ornithopter could not solve was the particular one whose exact nature Leonardo may have understood, but could not address with the founding mechanical resources of the 15th century. The specific human muscle power was not sufficient to drive the exact wing mechanism at the particular speed that the founding aerodynamic requirement of lift demanded. The particular notebooks contain, alongside the founding ornithopter designs, the exact studies of bird wing aerodynamics, whose specific content reveals an understanding of the founding principles of lift that the formal aerodynamic tradition would not articulate until the 19th century. Leonardo understood that the particular curvature of the wing's upper surface created the specific pressure differential, whose exact character was the founding mechanism of aerodynamic lift. He could not build the exact engine that would eventually make the specific insight practically applicable, because the founding internal combustion engine was 4 centuries away. He drew the particular problem with the exact precision of a man who understood it, and designed the founding solution for a technology he did not yet have. The armored vehicle design, the specific shallow cone structure whose particular overlapping metal plates, and the exact revolving weapon platforms whose founding arrangement created the specific all-around defensive, offensive capacity was the exact expression of Leonardo's particular military engineering imagination applied to the specific problem of the battlefield, whose founding character was being transformed by the exact artillery revolution of the 15th century. The particular vehicle was designed to be moved by the exact arrangement of cranks and gears, whose specific mechanism would allow the founding crew inside to propel it across the battlefield terrain without exposure to the particular direct fire, whose exact danger the founding armored shell was designed to eliminate. Contemporary engineers who have examined the exact drawings have noted the specific detail. The particular gear arrangement that Leonardo drew would have caused the founding wheels to rotate in opposite directions, making the vehicle unmovable. That suggests either the exact mechanical error of a man who was designing faster than he was calculating, or the particular deliberate sabotage of a man who was selling military secrets to a patron he did not fully trust. The hydraulic investigations whose specific practical expression was the founding canalization projects that Leonardo designed for Ludovico Sforza's Milan were the particular engineering work whose exact character reveals the founding combination of theoretical understanding and practical application that the specific Leonardine engineering tradition achieved at its most complete. The particular Naviglio canal system that the founding Milanese hydraulic tradition had been developing since the 13th century was extended and improved by the exact Leonardo-designed locks and channels whose specific engineering logic was the founding expression of the particular hydraulic theory, whose notebook pages contained the exact understanding of water flow in channels and the particular mechanisms of tidal and current behavior, whose founding character, the formal hydraulic engineering tradition, would not systematize for another 2 centuries. The specific model of the ideal city that Leonardo designed for Ludovico Sforza, the particular 2-level urban design whose exact lower level was the founding service and goods movement infrastructure, and whose specific upper level was the particular residential and commercial space of the founding human-scale city, was the exact expression of the founding urban planning insight that the specific contemporary cities of the 15th century, with their particular combination of private wealth and public squalor, made both obviously necessary and institutionally impossible to implement. The founding paradox of Leonardo's specific mechanical inventions was the particular institutional reality of the Renaissance patronage system within which they were conceived and abandoned. The specific machines that Leonardo designed required the exact institutional mechanism of the systematic development and testing and production that the founding patronage system organized around the particular needs of individual courts whose specific requirements were the artistic and ceremonial expressions of dynastic power rather than the exact systematic development of technological capacity could not provide. The particular ornithopter needed the founding wind tunnel and the exact materials science that the specific 20th century would eventually provide. The armored vehicle needed the exact engine and the particular metallurgical capacity that the specific 19th century would develop. The founding hydraulic machines were the nearest to practical implementation, and the exact canalization work that Leonardo actually built, the particular portions of the Milanese canal system, whose specific engineering was his founding, practical contribution was the limited expression of what the founding complete hydraulic vision would have accomplished if the particular institutional resources had been available. The specific machines that Leonardo drew in the founding notebooks were not merely the fantastic imaginings of a creative mind unconstrained by practical reality. They were the exact engineering solutions to the particular problems whose founding character Leonardo understood with the specific precision of a man who had calculated the mechanisms and identified the requirements. What he could not provide was the particular industrial and materials technology whose exact development, the specific 4 or 5 centuries following his death, would eventually produce. The founding machines were real. The world that could build them had not yet arrived. The letter that Leonardo wrote to Ludovico Sforza around 1482, the particular document whose specific content was the founding self-presentation of the 30-year-old Florentine artist to the most powerful military ruler in northern Italy, is the exact expression of a man who understood with the particular practical intelligence that his foundational illegitimacy had produced what the specific market for his specific talents required him to emphasize. The founding letter enumerated, in the particular ordered precision of a man who had thought carefully about the exact argument he was making, the specific military engineering capabilities that Leonardo was offering, the particular portable bridges, whose exact design allowed armies to advance and retreat across waterways, the specific techniques for draining moats during siege operations, the exact methods for destroying enemy fortifications, and the founding defensive methods for protecting one's own, the particular artillery designs, and the exact cannon designs, and the founding methods of making artillery effective on the specific battlefield conditions of the Italian military landscape. The painting, the particular mention of his capacity as a painter, the exact statement that in peacetime he could give satisfaction equal to any other in architecture, and the composition of public buildings came at the end of the founding letter, almost as an afterthought. After the specific military capabilities, whose exact enumeration occupied the founding majority of the particular document, Ludovico Sforza was the particular kind of Italian Renaissance prince whose exact political situation made Leonardo's specific combination of capabilities precisely what the founding court required. The Sforza dynasty was newly established in Milan. The particular Francesco Sforza had seized the duchy from the Visconti in 1450, and Ludovico's specific claim to power was the exact expression of the founding military usurpation, whose particular legitimacy remained the specific political challenge that the cultural achievement of the court was partly designed to address. A dynasty that had taken power by force needed the particular cultural apparatus of the legitimate ruler, the exact artistic commissions, the founding architectural projects, the specific patronage of learning and culture, to convert the founding military fact of its power into the particular cultural expression of its legitimacy. Leonardo was the exact person who could provide the founding artistic achievement and the particular engineering capability simultaneously, the specific combination whose character was the exact expression of what the founding court of a military ruler trying to become a legitimate cultural patron required. The 17 years in Milan were the particular period of Leonardo's specific career that produced the Last Supper and the founding anatomical investigations and the exact mechanical designs and the particular botanical studies and the founding scientific observations across the entire range of his intellectual interests, the most concentrated, specific period of multidisciplinary investigation in the founding history of his extraordinary career. The Last Supper, painted on the particular refectory wall of Santa Maria delle Grazie between approximately 1495 and 1498, was the founding expression of the specific Leonardine psychological theory of representation at its most ambitious scale, the particular depiction of the exact moment of Christ's declaration that one of the apostles would betray him, chosen by Leonardo for the founding reason that it was the specific moment of maximum psychological complexity in the narrative, the exact instant when each particular apostle's individual reaction to the founding declaration was the specific, most revealing expression of the particular character that Leonardo's founding psychological theory required the representation to capture, the experimental technique whose particular character was the exact cause of the founding deterioration that began almost immediately after the specific painting's completion, was the precise expression of Leonardo's founding refusal to accept the particular constraints of the established medium, when those constraints conflicted with the exact artistic requirements of the founding vision. Traditional fresco required the specific application of paint to wet plaster in the exact sections that could be completed before the particular plaster dried. The founding technical constraint whose specific consequence was that the artist had to work quickly and could not achieve the particular subtle transitions and revisions that Leonardo's founding approach to representation required. Leonardo painted on dry plaster with the exact experimental mixture of oil and tempera, whose particular adhesion to the specific stone wall was insufficient for the founding permanence that the commission required. The deterioration was visible within decades of the painting's completion. The French invasion of 1499 that ended Ludovico Sforza's rule was the particular political catastrophe whose exact consequence for Leonardo was the specific loss of the founding patronage that had sustained his investigations. For 17 years, the exact French forces that took Milan were not the particular enemies of Leonardo's specific person. He was not imprisoned or harmed, but the founding collapse of the specific institutional structure that had provided the particular financial security and the exact freedom from specific commissions that the Sforza court had eventually provided was the founding act of the specific wandering that defined the next phase of Leonardo's career. The particular Leonardo, who left Milan in 1499, was 47 years old, the specific most accomplished painter in the Italian tradition, the exact engineer who had designed and partially built the founding canalization improvements to the Milanese hydraulic system, the particular anatomist who had been conducting the founding investigations that nobody outside his immediate circle knew about. He traveled to Mantua, to Venice, eventually back to Florence, carrying the specific notebooks whose founding content was the particular private accumulation of 17 years of the most comprehensive intellectual investigation in the history of the Italian Renaissance, looking for the exact next patron, whose particular requirements would create the specific conditions for the founding next phase. The specific painting that the world knows as the Mona Lisa was probably not called that during Leonardo's lifetime, the particular title, whose exact origin is the founding record in Giorgio Vasari's Lives of the Work. Artists, published 31 years after Leonardo's death, is the specific Italian diminutive of Madonna, meaning My Lady, combined with the particular name Lisa, the founding popular identification of the specific sitter, whose exact identity Vasari provided from the founding tradition of the Florentine artistic community, rather than from any particular direct knowledge of the specific. Commission, Francesco del Giocondo, the exact Florentine silk merchant, who probably commissioned the particular portrait around 1503 to celebrate the specific birth of his second son, never received the painting. The particular work that was begun for the founding commercial occasion of a merchant's family portrait became something else over the exact decade or more of Leonardo's intermittent attention, something whose specific character exceeded the founding purpose of the commission in ways that the particular patron could not have anticipated, and that the specific painter himself may not have been able to fully articulate. Leonardo carried the painting with him to France in 1516 and kept it in his personal possession until his death. The particular personal significance that this exact fact reveals the founding choice to retain a commissioned work that should, by the specific conventions of the Renaissance patronage system, have been delivered to its particular patron is the most complete expression of what the Mona Lisa meant to Leonardo that the founding historical record provides. He kept it because the particular investigation it represented was not finished, or because the exact painting had become the specific vehicle for a founding personal investigation whose character exceeded any particular commission, or because the founding combination of technical and psychological problems that the specific work embodied was the exact expression of the particular intellectual tradition whose development the Mona Lisa represented in its most complete form. The sfumato technique, whose specific optical effect defines the Mona Lisa's founding visual character, was not, in the particular painting's specific application, the same technique as in the earlier works where the founding principle was already visible. The exact application of the particular sfumato in the Mona Lisa was the systematic expression of the founding optical theory that Leonardo's specific investigations had produced over the preceding decades, the particular understanding that the exact human eye perceives the founding boundaries between forms not as specific, hard edges, but as the particular atmospheric gradations whose exact character is determined by the specific distance and the founding light conditions between the observer and the observed form. The particular layering of translucent oil glazes the exact 20 or more specific layers whose founding application required the particular drying time between layers. That was itself the founding technical explanation of the specific years that the painting occupied Leonardo's attention was the precise technical expression of the founding optical insight, whose character was the specific unified theory of vision that Leonardo had been developing since the founding prism experiments of his early years. The geological landscape visible in the specific background of the Mona Lisa, the particular eroded rock formations, the exact atmospheric perspective that makes the specific distant features of the landscape recede into the founding blue-grey haze, whose character was the precise optical effect of the atmospheric perspective that Leonardo's founding investigations had produced, is not the decorative background of the conventional portrait tradition. It is the exact expression of Leonardo's specific geological understanding of the particular processes that produce the founding landscape, forms the precise erosion of rock by water, the specific deposition of sediment, the founding tectonic processes whose exact character Leonardo had been investigating in the particular notebooks and whose specific understanding produced the exact landscape, whose particular features are the precise geological expression of the founding natural philosophy. The specific smile, whose exact character has occupied 5 centuries of analysis, is the founding expression of the particular Leonardine psychological theory that emotion is most powerfully communicated through the exact suggestion rather than the specific statement, the founding principle whose character is the particular indirection of the implied rather than the direct depiction of the exact psychological state. The founding sfumato of the specific smile's corners, the particular softening of the exact edges of the mouth, whose specific ambiguity is the founding visual expression of the psychological theory, makes it impossible to determine with the exact certainty that a harder-edged representation would provide whether the particular expression is the founding expression of amusement or sadness or knowledge or some specific combination of the particular emotional states whose exact nature or the founding ambiguity, refuses to resolve. The specific painting that Francis I purchased from Leonardo's estate for 4,000 écus, the particular royal price, whose exact generosity reflected the founding French royal understanding of what the specific work was, worth eventually entered the royal collection and eventually hung in the Louvre, where it hangs today, behind the particular bulletproof glass whose exact protective installation followed the specific theft of 1911, whose founding consequence was the first public recognition of the particular painting's exact cultural significance. The Mona Lisa is the founding most visited painting in the world. Leonardo never finished it. The specific commission that the Florentine Republic placed in 1503 for the particular battle paintings that were to decorate the exact Great Council Hall of the Palazzo della Signoria was the founding institutional expression of what happens when a political body, with the specific cultural ambitions of the Florentine Republic, decides to commemorate its particular military history with the exact greatest artistic talents available in the contemporary tradition. The particular Battle of Anghiari, the specific 1440 Florentine victory over Milanese forces, whose exact military significance was the founding defeat of the Visconti expansionism that had threatened Florentine independence, was assigned to Leonardo. The specific Battle of Cassina, the particular 1364 Florentine victory over Pisan forces, whose exact military significance was the founding defense of Florentine territorial integrity, was assigned to Michelangelo. The founding result was the particular simultaneous presence in the same specific building of the two greatest artistic minds of the Renaissance, each working on the exact commission that the specific institutional authority of the Republic had determined they should produce. Leonardo was 51 years old in 1503. The particular manner in which the specific senior artist of the founding Florentine tradition approached the exact commission, the particular preparation of the full-size cartoon, the specific experimental technique of painting on dry wall with the exact encaustic mixture whose founding character was the particular attempt to solve the technical problem of large-scale wall painting without the specific constraints of traditional fresco, the exact preliminary studies whose surviving fragments reveal the founding compositional intelligence of the specific most powerful battle painting ever conceived, was the expression of the particular working method of a man whose exact perfectionism and founding breadth of investigation made the specific timeline of the institutional commission, the particular incompatible constraint. Michelangelo was 28 years old. The specific manner in which the younger artist approached the exact commission was the particular expression of a different founding, incompatibility, not the specific perfectionism of Leonardo's founding approach, but the exact, personal preference of a sculptor whose particular medium was stone, and whose founding approach to the specific problem of wall painting was the incompatible requirement of working in the exact medium that his particular genius had not fully claimed. Michelangelo produced the specific full-size cartoon of the Battle of Cassina with the founding compositional intelligence of the exact sculptor who had just finished the David. The particular naked soldiers, interrupted in their bathing, the exact muscular figures whose founding quality was the specific expression of the sculptural tradition's mastery of the human body and never began to paint it. The founding personal hostility between the specific men was not merely professional rivalry, but the exact incompatibility of two founding philosophical approaches to the specific question of what art was for. Leonardo's particular understanding of painting as the exact superior art, whose founding superiority rested on the specific capacity to represent the particular visual world with the exact comprehensiveness that the founding scientific investigation had made possible, was the precise philosophical position whose character made the specific primacy of sculpture. Michelangelo's founding claimed the exact wrong answer to the particular question. Michelangelo's founding contempt for the specific Leonardine approach was the particular expression of a man whose exact belief in the founding divine inspiration of artistic creation made the specific, scientific, and observational foundation of Leonardo's particular method, not the founding superiority, but the exact limitation of a mind too bound to the particular visible world to achieve the founding transcendence that the specific divine aspiration of the greatest art required. The particular recorded exchanges between the specific men in the streets of Florence were the founding public expressions of the exact private mutual contempt whose character the particular artistic and philosophical incompatibility between them had produced. Michelangelo reportedly mocked Leonardo publicly for the specific failure of the founding bronze horse in Milan, the exact equestrian monument whose particular 17 years of Leonardo's intermittent attention had produced a clay model that the founding French invasion had destroyed before. The specific casting could be completed as the founding evidence of the particular inability to finish things that Leonardo's exact perfectionism and founding breadth of investigation consistently produced. Leonardo's particular recorded responses were the exact expressions of a man whose specific dignity was the founding alternative to the particular personal attack, whose character he found beneath the specific level of engagement, appropriate to the founding question of artistic merit. Leonardo's Battle of Anghiari failed in the specific technical sense, the particular experimental encaustic technique whose exact intended advantage was the founding drying speed that would allow the specific retouching and revision that the traditional fresco's wet plaster timeline denied, produced instead the exact opposite of the founding intended result, the particular paint dissolving in the heat of the fires that Leonardo lit to dry the specific surface. The founding cartoon was studied and copied by the particular artists who saw it, and the exact copies that survive are the specific record of the founding composition that the technical failure destroyed. Rubens made the particular copy, whose exact character is the founding best surviving visual evidence of what Leonardo had conceived. The particular council hall that was supposed to contain the founding two greatest battle paintings in the history of European art eventually had one of its specific walls covered by Vasari's fresco, the exact painting that recent technical investigation has suggested may conceal behind its particular surface the specific surviving remains of Leonardo's founding Battle of Anghiari, the exact painting that failed and was painted over, possibly still there beneath the founding Vasari surface, waiting for the particular technology whose specific, non-invasive investigation might eventually reveal it. The specific page of Leonardo's notebooks that contains the founding geological observation about the particular shells found in the mountains of northern Italy is the exact document that most completely reveals the founding character of the specific Leonardine scientific method as distinguished from the particular natural philosophy tradition that preceded it. The shells, Leonardo observed, were not placed there by the specific biblical flood whose founding theological explanation the particular natural philosophy tradition had accepted as the exact sufficient account of the fossils in the mountains. The particular shells could not have been deposited by the flood because the founding flood lasted 40 days, and the exact shells found in the mountains were too far from the specific sea and too embedded in the particular rock strata whose founding character was the specific evidence of the exact long-duration processes whose character was not the particular catastrophic event of the founding theological tradition, but the specific gradual accumulation whose exact timescale was geological rather than biblical. The particular shells were in the mountains because the specific mountains had once been at the bottom of a sea, and the exact processes that had moved them were the founding long-duration geological processes whose particular character, the specific biblical timeline, could not accommodate. This specific geological insight, the founding understanding that the particular landscape features of the earth were the exact products of the specific long-duration natural processes whose character exceeded the founding biblical timeline was not published during Leonardo's lifetime. Nicolaus Steno, who is credited with the founding establishment of the specific stratigraphic principles whose exact character was the particular geological insight that the specific rock strata recorded the founding sequential history of the Earth's geological past, published his founding work in 1669. He was born 150 years after Leonardo's death. The particular geological understanding that Leonardo had arrived at through the exact direct observation of the specific Lombard landscape and the founding investigation of the particular fossil record was rediscovered independently by the formal geological tradition whose founding figure had no way of knowing what the specific mirror script notebooks contained. The specific hydraulic investigations that fill the particular notebook pages with the exact studies of water in channels, waves, whirlpools, and the founding turbulent flow conditions, whose character the formal fluid dynamics tradition would eventually describe mathematically as Reynolds numbers, and boundary layer theory were the expression of a mind that had been observing water since the particular Vinci childhood, whose founding, the natural environment, was the specific watercourses of the Tuscan hills. Leonardo understood that the exact flow of water in a channel was not the founding simple laminar flow of the idealized theoretical tradition, but the particular complex turbulent behavior whose specific character depended on the exact velocity and the founding geometry of the channel, and the particular roughness of the specific channel walls in the precise manner that the formal fluid dynamics tradition would not formally describe until the 19th century. The specific drawings of water in turbulent flow, the particular spiral structures, the exact vortex formations, the founding wave interference patterns, are the precise observational records of a man who saw the specific behavior of water with the founding comprehensiveness of a scientific observer rather than the particular decorative appreciation of a landscape artist. The founding cardiovascular insight, the specific understanding of the heart as a mechanical pump whose exact function was the particular circulation of the blood through the specific closed system of arteries and veins, whose founding character was the precise cardiovascular anatomy that he would establish in 1628 was the exact expression of Leonardo's particular anatomical investigation at its most prescient. Harvey's founding discovery was the specific most consequential medical advance of the 17th century. Leonardo had understood the particular mechanical principle of the exact cardiac function 100 years earlier, drawn it with the specific precision of the founding engineering analysis, and left it in the particular mirror script of the exact private notebook. The specific observations on the wave nature of light and sound, the founding notebook passages whose exact content describes the particular propagation of light and sound as the specific wave phenomena whose character was the founding wave theory, that the particular optical and acoustic traditions of the 19th century would eventually establish, were the precise anticipations of the specific scientific understanding that the formal tradition arrived at 300 years after the founding Leonardine. Observation. The particular analogy between the exact ripples produced by a stone dropped in water and the founding propagation of sound through air, the specific spreading of the particular disturbance from the exact point of origin in the disturbance, founding concentric pattern whose character was the precise wave. Behavior that the formal acoustic theory would eventually describe mathematically was the founding expression of the specific physical insight whose character the 19th century wave theory of sound and light would eventually formalize. The specific founding tragedy of the Leonardine scientific discoveries is not the particular failure of Leonardo himself. The exact investigations were conducted with the founding rigor and the specific observational precision that the scientific tradition requires. The particular tragedy is the institutional one, the specific absence of the founding publication mechanism that would have allowed the exact discoveries to enter the scientific conversation and produce the particular consequences whose founding character would have been the specific acceleration of the European scientific revolution by decades or centuries. The founding knowledge was there. The particular institution for receiving it was not. The specific manor house at Clou today, called Clos Lucé, that Francis I provided for Leonardo, was connected to the royal chateau of Amboise by the exact underground passage whose particular character, the founding private connection between the specific royal residence and the particular genius's accommodation, was the precise architectural expression of the relationship between the specific French king and the exact aging Italian master, whose founding cultural significance Francis understood in the particular manner that the Italian patronage, the system had consistently failed to match with the specific material generosity that the founding most celebrated genius in the contemporary European world deserved. Leonardo received the specific annual stipend of 1,000 écus, the exact amount that was the particular expression of the founding royal understanding, that the specific Leonardo was not being hired to produce particular commissions, but was being installed as a founding cultural presence whose exact personal presence in the specific French court was itself the particular royal achievement. He was 64 years old, and the specific right-hand palsy, whose particular onset had begun sometime in the decade before his arrival in France, had made the exact painting that was the founding primary expression of his public genius increasingly difficult. The particular contemporary accounts of the specific French years describe Leonardo receiving visitors the exact Florentine secretary Antonio de Beatis, whose founding account of the specific 1517 visit describes Leonardo showing the particular paintings he had brought from Italy, including the exact Mona Lisa and the specific Saint John the Baptist and the founding Saint Anne, and discussing the particular investigations with Francis I, in the exact manner of an aging scholar whose founding intellectual engagement had not diminished with the specific physical limitation that had slowed the particular practical expression of the founding genius. The particular king visited frequently. The exact royal fascination with the specific genius whose founding cultural significance the French court had recognized with the particular appointment was the genuine expression of the specific personal relationship whose character exceeded the founding patron-artist dynamic of the Italian tradition. The final notebooks of the specific French years are the particular expression of a mind conducting its founding last investigations in the exact conditions of the most complete personal freedom it had ever experienced. The specific water studies that fill the particular pages of the founding last notebooks are the exact continuation of the hydraulic investigations that had organized the particular Leonardine scientific imagination since the founding. Vinci childhood, the specific drawings of deluges and floods, whose particular character, the exact swirling water masses, whose founding scale is the specific apocalyptic scale of the natural force rather than the particular manageable scale of the engineering channel, has been interpreted as the founding psychological expression of the specific mind of a man approaching death and finding, in the particular natural force, whose exact founding investigation had organized his intellectual life, the specific image of the universal dissolution whose character was the founding human experience of mortality. Whether the founding psychological interpretation of the specific deluge drawings is the exact correct reading of the particular late Leonardo, is the founding question whose answer the specific historical record does not provide with the exact certainty that interpretation requires. What the founding drawings reveal with the specific certainty of direct visual evidence is the particular quality of observational and compositional intelligence that the exact physical limitation of the right-hand palsy had not diminished the specific mastery of the founding drawing, tradition whose character was the exact expression of a lifetime of seeing that the particular palsy could slow but not stop. The founding drawings of water in catastrophic motion are the specific, most technically accomplished expressions of the particular Leonardine hydraulic investigation, produced in the exact conditions of the specific freedom and physical limitation that the founding French years created simultaneously. The specific relationship between Leonardo and Francis I reached its founding most intimate expression, if the particular historical tradition whose exact source is the Vasari account can be trusted, at the moment of Leonardo's death. The founding story that the specific French king was with Leonardo when he died on the 2nd of May 1519, and that the particular dying man expired in the exact royal arms whose founding presence was the specific expression of the personal regard that the particular relationship had produced, is almost certainly the founding romanticization of the specific historical reality rather than its exact factual description. The founding royal accounts place Francis at Saint-Germain-en-Laye on that specific date. But the particular story's founding character, the exact expression of the specific cultural significance of the founding relationship between the dying genius and the particular royal patron whose exact generosity had provided the founding final conditions of the specific intellectual freedom reveals the founding manner in which the contemporary European world understood what the particular death of Leonardo meant. The specific manor house at Clou, where Leonardo died on the 2nd of May 1519, contained the founding collection of the particular notebooks whose exact content was the founding most comprehensive private scientific investigation in the history of the Italian Renaissance. They passed to the specific student Francesco Melzi, who carried them back to Italy and preserved them for the particular 50 years of his remaining life. After Melzi's death, the exact dispersion of the founding collection began, the particular notebooks sold and given away and separated from each other, in the specific manner that has distributed the founding content across the particular archives of Milan and Windsor and Paris and Madrid, where the exact pages still yield the founding new insights that the specific 5 centuries of study have not yet exhausted. The Louvre Museum in Paris receives approximately 9 million visitors per year, and the particular room where the Mona Lisa hangs, the exact Salle des États, whose specific renovation in 2005 was designed to accommodate the founding extraordinary volume of the specific visitor traffic that the particular demands. Painting contains, on any given day, hundreds of people pressing against the founding crowd barriers, whose exact distance from the specific painting is approximately 6 meters, looking at a work whose particular scale, smaller than most visitors expect from the specific cultural magnitude of its founding reputation, is the precise 77 by 53 centimeters of poplar panel on which the founding most recognized painting in human history was created by a man who carried it in his personal luggage for the last 3 years of his life and never delivered it to the specific patron who had commissioned it. The particular painting that 9 million people traveled to Paris to see was a private possession of the founding man who made it, the exact personal investigation of a genius who found the specific work more important than the founding commercial transaction of the particular commission. The specific anatomical tradition that Leonardo's particular drawings established was not directly transmitted to the founding formal medical tradition during his lifetime or in the immediate decades following his death, because the exact notebooks were not published in any systematic way until the particular 19th century. But the founding indirect influence of the specific Leonardine approach, the exact combination of direct observation and three-dimensional representation, whose founding character was the particular methodological revolution that the specific formal anatomical tradition was simultaneously developing through the exact independent investigations of the founding 16th century anatomists, was the particular expression of the specific broader intellectual shift whose character the Leonardine anatomical tradition represented even without the founding direct transmission that publication would have provided. When Andreas Vesalius published his founding De Humani Corporis Fabrica in 1543, the specific standard of anatomical illustration, whose exact quality was the founding departure from the particular schematic Galenic tradition, reflected the broader methodological revolution, whose founding expression was the specific, direct observational approach that Leonardo had been practicing, in private since the particular 1480s. The specific engineering tradition that Leonardo's exact mechanical designs established in the founding notebooks has been rediscovered in the particular 2 centuries since the specific notebooks were first systematically published, and the founding discoveries that the exact rediscovery has produced are the particular expression of what the founding most comprehensive private scientific investigation in the history of the Italian Renaissance actually contained. Contemporary engineers who have examined the specific ornithopter designs have confirmed the particular aerodynamic principles, whose exact expression in the founding drawings reflects the specific correct understanding of the founding. Mechanisms of flight, whose character, the formal aeronautical, tradition did not establish until Lilienthal and the Wright brothers in the specific late 19th and early 20th centuries. The exact hydraulic designs whose particular engineering logic is confirmed by the founding modern fluid dynamics, the specific Leonardo-designed locks and channels whose exact mechanism reflects the founding correct understanding of the particular hydraulic principles, are the precise engineering expression of the specific scientific understanding whose founding character was 3 centuries ahead of the particular formal tradition that eventually caught up with it. The particular cultural significance of Leonardo da Vinci in the contemporary world operates through the founding legend whose exact character, the specific Renaissance man, the particular universal genius, the founding man who was born 5 centuries ahead of his time, is simultaneously the specific cultural construction of a civilization that needs the exact symbol of the particular human creative potential at its most complete and the founding, genuine historical reality whose character was the specific concentration of extraordinary intellectual gifts in a single individual whose particular historical context both enabled and frustrated their full expression. The specific notebooks are not the particular invention of a romantic tradition. They exist. The exact drawings are there. The founding discoveries are documented in the specific mirror script whose particular systematic translation is still not complete 5 centuries after the founding writing. The philosophical question that Leonardo's specific life poses most forcefully is the particular one about the relationship between individual genius and institutional context, about whether the exact discoveries that Leonardo made in the private notebooks would have changed human history if the founding publication tradition had existed to transmit them, and whether the particular isolation of a genius whose specific investigations were so far ahead of the institutional context that they produced no founding scientific tradition is the exact expression of the specific human tendency to produce knowledge faster than the particular social structures can absorb it. The founding tragedy of Leonardo is not the particular misunderstanding. Nobody who encountered Leonardo failed to recognize the specific, extraordinary character of the founding genius. The exact tragedy is the institutional one. The specific social structures of the founding historical moment had no mechanism for receiving the particular knowledge whose character was the exact most comprehensive private scientific investigation in the history of European civilization. The founding answer to the particular question of what Leonardo means now is the exact one that the specific 9 million annual visitors to the Mona Lisa are providing by their particular presence, the founding recognition that the specific work of a man who died in a French manor house in 1519 is still the particular most visited painting in the world, that the exact notebooks whose founding mirror script is still being translated are still producing the specific new insights that the founding 5 centuries of study have not exhausted, and that the particular genius, whose exact investigations were conducted in the specific private conditions of the Renaissance patronage system, continues to produce the founding new understanding that the specific contemporary tradition is still receiving from the exact investigations whose founding character was the particular most comprehensive private scientific project in the history of human civilization. What do you think? A child born illegitimate in a Tuscan farmhouse who taught himself everything the specific Renaissance could teach and then went beyond it, who painted the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, who designed flying machines and tanks and hydraulic systems that the world would not build for 5 centuries, who discovered the principles of geology and cardiovascular physiology and fluid dynamics in private notebooks that nobody read for 300 years after his death. Is that a story of extraordinary human genius? Or the particular story of what the specific combination of exceptional ability and the wrong institutional moment produces when the exact social structures cannot receive the particular knowledge that the founding genius has created? Leave your thoughts below, because the history of Leonardo is not finished. His specific notebooks are still being translated and studied, and the particular investigations he began are still producing the specific discoveries that the founding mirror script concealed for 5 centuries, and the ending remains genuinely uncertain.